So Dustin, you've been on the select board for a little under a year at this point.
Yep.
So what led you to run before? What leads you to run again? And kind of maybe you could touch on how your experience has been on the board.
Ooh, good question. So when I initially jumped into this race about a year ago, of course we were going through a lot of racial reckoning. We still are, but really hit the height of that into last year. And I know that one of the big things that for me makes me feel a part of this community is to feel welcomed. And my predecessor in this seat, given the comments that were said and the ways in which sort of everything unfolded, didn't leave me feeling that way. And I felt one of the biggest detractors of people who come into a town is to not feel represented, to not feel welcomed into it. And so part of the reason that I ran was I wanted folks to feel welcomed. Didn't matter what side of the aisle you were on, but I wanted folks to not feel disenfranchised. And so that was a big thing for me, is sort of this shift into inclusivity. And we sort of ran on this idea that we wanted to bring that transparency, we wanted to bring inclusiveness, and we wanted to be a welcoming community and move past what had happened almost a year ago. Well, now a year is just gone. It feels really fast, but I've cherished it every month and every meeting. And so over this year, I've really seen this learning curve of how do things get done? How do you make decisions? How do you truly represent every voice? And just how does the local town politics sort of work? And coming out the other end, I sort of now can see a much larger vision, especially with a 3-year term. And so now I'm continuing to run on inclusivity, on wanting people to feel welcomed. But more so, I think now that I know I'll have a 3-year term and not just a 1 year and coming back around, is that now we can really plan for the future and to see really New Gloucester both move forward while still holding its past and honoring its past. Because I think a lot of people really cherish that. So our slogan, our thought process is how do we hold the past, how do we really honor it, but still move forward and think about the future and think about places that we can improve. So I'm running really with that broad understanding. Where can we move things forward and yet still cherish who we are? So I'm excited for this time around. I'm excited because I know, if we win, it's a 3-year term. We don't have to come back around and do this, although I do like campaign season. It is fun. So, but I'll ask you the same thing. You're coming into this, I know you've been on a slew of committees, but now you're looking for a select board seat. What made you decide to run, and what's your vision here? And yeah, tell me a little bit about what's got you sort of jumping into this opportunity.
Sure. So similar to you, some of the things that brought me in originally were very similar. Wanting New Gloucester to be as inclusive as possible, and some things transpired that didn't make it feel that way, and some things happened, right in my even smaller community that got my attention. And thankfully met you and met some other folks who had similar goals of improving New Gloucester in that regard. And I talked to some friends who were involved in local and state government elsewhere, and they said a great place to get involved is on the committee level, where you're really working on the issues, really working on the details, collaborating with other volunteers. And so I saw there were openings on 3 committees, on the Land Management Planning Committee, Public Safety Committee, and Budget Committee.
Big committees, yeah.
Yeah, they were, and it's been a really interesting process. And I've gotten to work with a lot of folks who are, some are new to committees in New Gloucester government, some who have been doing it for decades.
Right.
So I've learned a ton. And then through that process, I've learned a little bit about how to be effective in those types of roles. My background's more in business and now in nonprofits, so being on a really fully volunteer committee is different.
Yep.
And like I said before, challenges excite me, so it's been enjoyable.
Good.
And then through sort of as the openings came up here on the select board, some folks have asked me to run, and I gave it some serious thought, and I decided, yeah, that is something I would really like to do. I kind of feel called to action.
Yep.
Largely because I want to really make sure everybody in New Gloucester is heard and is represented, That's why, I'm registered as unaffiliated and running as independent, because we really want to truly represent everybody and being open to everyone's comments, because that's the only way to do it right.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate the way you're saying that too. I'll ask you this too, as we're sort of talking about your candidacy and moving it forward, tell me something that the voters should know about you. As they begin to go to the polls, we know it's coming up in June, it's going to go by just like that. What do you want voters to know about you in terms of your candidacy?
Sure. So I'm a little surprised to be running. If you asked me 5 or 10 years ago, did you think I would be getting involved in local politics? I would have probably said not likely, because I don't consider myself a political person. I focus on the things that matter to me. I want, all my time spent doing good things or enjoyable things and working with people I enjoy spending time with. And so, I learned early on that in town governance, it's supposed to be apolitical, it's supposed to be nonpartisan. We're supposed to just be citizens who are volunteering or serving with the best interests of all of the residents at heart, and to really truly be soliciting comments and input on the issues, because we may think that we know how this should go and what it might create, but we don't know that.
Right.
And there's lots of different perspectives and different backgrounds and people in the town. And so what I've kind of observed over the last few years of watching this process is, unfortunately, things have gotten politicized in New Gloucester. It's not necessarily outspoken, but it's pretty clear that people have forgotten that deep down, I think we all care about the same things. We can talk another time about what those are, but I think that from the national discourse to media, people have forgotten what really matters to them. And they're kind of being told what to feel about this, that, or the other, and that makes it hard for people to listen to each other and work together on the issues right here in town.
Yep.
And people are saying things, but then they're not listening or not really working hard to see where other people are coming from. And those are kind of some of the prime motivations for me wanting to get involved and be on the select board. Is not just listen to people in town and make sure that they're well represented, and make sure that everybody gets heard, and that their input isn't just heard, but it is in an organized fashion used in the process of deciding whatever matters at hand. And also listening to colleagues on the board and where they're coming from, what they've heard from the folks that they've been talking to. And I've only studied political science a little bit, definitely not to the extent that you have, but to me it's a lot about negotiating, and it's not about getting your way against somebody else getting their way. It's about collecting diverse input and trying to create a common good result that works for everybody, and not just kind of solves a problem right now and creates another problem down the line.